Welcome to another episode of the Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast, where we offer actions and steps you can take today to start balancing your hormones naturally. This is your podcast host, Leah Brueggemann. I am a functional diagnostic nutritional practitioner. I am honored and excited to be your guide on your journey to better understanding your hormonal health and how it affects your everyday life. Hey ladies, welcome back to another episode of the Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast. We have another podcast episode actually that's been a big request, which is on PCOS. So we have Dr. Potter on, who is a functional medicine naturopathic doctor. So the best of basically all the worlds here. And she's a leading expert in PCOS fertility. So I'm going to let you take it from here because I want to hear how you became an expert in PCOS, like what took you down that path, because there's so many different, I feel like, ways to kind of look at fertility.
Yes. Thank you, Leah. It's so wonderful to be here. So I've been in practice for, almost a decade now and have always been working in women's health and just started getting more and more patients who are coming into my office and saying things like, well, I talked with my other doctor and I was told I have PCOS and I just, they gave me a pamphlet and a prescription and I'm still not pregnant. Is there anything else? Yeah, right. Or, something else that gets me, they say that they were told like the only answer is to lose weight. And if they lose weight, everything with their fertility will open up for them. So good luck. And that's incredibly frustrating. And so, I'm hearing these stories from these women and I'm just thinking to myself, like something has to be done here because there are so many more options for fertility and for PCOS. And what's happening is that there's a lot of misconceptions out there about PCOS and there's a lot of misinformation that doctors are using with their patients. And so that's what led me on this path to really get clear foundational information, research backed, to help these women. And of course, sometimes medications are necessary and a really important part of the fertility journey, but it's missing this huge piece of your health that sometimes if we focus on these parts, that fertility piece opens right up. So
you just broke open like so many nuggets. So we're going to have to we're going to have to break this apart. One of the biggest ones that I want to actually start first with is, diagnosing and like the prescription for PCOS, because I find not only are they just told to lose weight and given a prescription, they're also told like, oh, you have PCOS, like come back when you want to get pregnant. Like, it's like, let's not even support you or help you or guide you unless you're trying to get pregnant. And I feel like this is such a misconception that makes me want to like bang my head against a wall, is that hormones only have to do with pregnancy, like your reproductive system. And it's like, well, yes, but they also have so many other things that they do. So can we dive into that a little bit? Can we talk about like, how do you even get diagnosed with PCOS? Like, what are some things that would make you go, maybe I should go see if I have PCOS?
Yeah, I know. This is so important. Okay, so there's really two steps to getting diagnosed with PCOS and then figuring out what's going on in your body so that you can have the most straightforward plan forward. So, part one would be, going through the diagnostic criteria for PCOS. And I will also say that in the medical community, there is lots of research being done on PCOS. So there is a set of criteria for diagnosis, but they vary a little bit. And it's changing. So it's something that the medical community is working really hard to try to understand. Right now, the three aspects of PCOS that you would need to fit into 2 out of 3 of these in order to be diagnosed. So one is having elevated androgen hormones, which is testosterone or male pattern hormones, which lead to symptoms like that unwanted hair growth, right? Like on the chin, upper thigh, that kind of thing. And then, so that's number one, elevated androgens. Number two would be ovulation issues. So, someone who is not having regular periods, someone who's testing to see if they're ovulating and finding out that they're not ovulating.
Mm-hmm.
And then number three would be having cysts on the ovaries. Yep. So that's also really interesting because it's called polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Yep.
But having cysts on your ovaries is not a requirement in order to be diagnosed with this.
Yeah.
So that's the first step, is to get diagnosed, to understand if you have PCOS or not. And then this is something that not a lot of doctors do, but it is the number one next step that I do, is to figure out what type of PCOS that person has. Yeah. Because PCOS is a syndrome, it looks different for everyone, right? Like what you need is going to be different from what your friend needs. And that's because it's doing different things in your body. And so what's been found is that there are really 4 categories that PCOS fits into. And so understanding if you're, one type or a mix of 3 or all of the types, that's going to be really important because, so say you're going into your doctor and they say, okay, well, you have PCOS, here's a prescription. That it works for some women, which is awesome. But what we're finding is that it doesn't work for everyone. And why is because that's just a blanket treatment. And so, PCOS just doesn't respond well to blanket treatment. So you need to take that next step of finding out what type you have. And then once you figure out what type, then you get that, straightforward treatment plan to open up for your fertility.
And so going back to the types, I just find that it needs a new name. Let's start with that. It needs a new name because so many women have cysts because your ovaries are dynamic. And if you don't ovulate, you're going to get a cyst. But they don't have PCOS. And then a lot of women with PCOS, sometimes they do regularly ovulate and they don't have cysts. And so then they don't get a diagnosis because the doctor's like, well, I'm just going to do an ultrasound and you have no cysts, so you don't have PCOS. And then I think you're struggling to figure out what exactly is wrong. So I definitely think it needs a new name. But how, if you go, okay, I have PCOS, I fit into 2 or 3 of these categories, which honestly, don't diagnose yourself, you guys, but I feel like you should have a pretty good idea if you have it or not, if you have the symptoms of elevated androgens and you have irregular cycles. It's you don't even need a test in some cases to, check that off. So if you go, oh, okay, I definitely have those, then advocate harder at your doctors. If they're like, oh no, you don't have any cysts on your ovaries. It's no, hello, I'd like some blood work. I'd like, all the things. So let's say you have PCOS and now you go, okay, what's the next step? So what are the 4 types? Let's dive into that.
Yeah. So, 4 types. And one, which is the most common, is insulin resistant, which is also, so big. It's so big that often people think insulin resistance is always a part of PCOS and a part of the diagnosis. It's not. Not everyone with PCOS has insulin resistance, but out of the types, it is the most common.
I think, go ahead. I think too, why you automatically think you have insulin resistance is PCOS kind of also gets lumped into it being really hard to lose weight. Which, like you said, it is the most common one, but sadly, 9 out of 10 Americans have a metabolic issue. And so it's even if you don't have insulin resistance, you could have other things going on that are also affecting your metabolism. So I can see why it's so easy to immediately go down that trail of oh, I got insulin resistance.
Yeah, right. So that's why it's important to talk with a doctor who can help you. You don't necessarily need to get a lab test done, but because there are some symptoms that are pretty indicative of insulin resistance. And, there are values for when you have insulin resistance, but even if you're not quite in that, you haven't advanced there yet, and you're having like imbalanced blood sugar issues, that's still something that you want to really pay attention to, particularly for fertility, because we know how strong that link is between insulin and ovulation. So that insulin resistance type is going to have, you're going to be feeling kind of irritable and hangry when you're skipping meals, or if you've gone too long without eating, you may gain weight pretty easily. And so those are kind of the strong signs of insulin resistance. And then type 2 is adrenal PCOS. So just understanding how strongly linked the adrenal hormones, cortisol and DHEA, how they are strongly linked with ovulation issues. And so, a lot of women who have PCOS, they're told really dismissive advice, just go lose some stress and everything will happen for you. Because, fertility is a really stressful journey. And to tell somebody that is just, it's insensitive. And so when we're talking about adrenal PCOS and your stress hormones, it's not to say go meditate a little bit extra every day and it'll all be great for you. No, what we're talking about is physiologically what your hormones are doing inside your body. And so there's really simple ways to test for that. We do salivary labs. And then we're able to see what cortisol is doing throughout the day. We can just map it. And we can look and see what DHEA levels are doing. And so that's really important because we do live in a pretty stressful environment, a culture that's stressful, and then add fertility on top of that, then your body might not be responding again hormonally to that stress. And so if your adrenal glands are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then that cascades into ovulation issues and those elevated androgens.
Okay. We're going to do a pause break to break that down too, because so often what I see happen, so I have a Facebook group, and it's actually quite big. We have over 7,000 members in there. And something so common that I see in there is someone goes, I have insulin resistant PCOS, or I have adrenal PCOS. And the comments flood with people being like, you need this supplement, and this supplement. And it changed my life. And I just always go, no, don't do that. Because everybody needs different supplements or responds differently. And so a lot of times you go, oh, yes, I'm stressed. Well, a lot of people are stressed. That doesn't necessarily mean you have adrenal PCOS. And jumping down that rabbit hole of just being like, oh, I need an adaptogen for my stress. I'm going to take some ashwagandha. And it's maybe that would work really well for you, and maybe it wouldn't. But I think we end up on spending more money on supplements by trying random things, trying to just kind of guesswork it instead of really figuring out, nope, this is exactly what's going on. This would be the best supplement for me. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to stick that in there so people don't start going and self-medicating themselves, because I see that so often.
Right. Of course, when you're wanting to have your baby, you're desperate to find options, but really it's a waste of money, and it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall.
It is.
When you're just like, oh, I heard this worked, or this worked for my friend, I'm going to try it. Because again, circling back to this, that PCOS, it's a syndrome, it's a mix of different symptoms and different processes in the body. So your internal picture is different than your friends. And so, and then when it comes to adaptogens, I love adaptogens. I use them all the time, but certain ones, they'll drop your cortisol. And if you already have low cortisol and you take an adaptogen that drops it even lower, you're going to wake up feeling hungover in the mornings and you're going to be miserable. So yes, I am right there on board with you, Leah,
And it can be frustrating, but and I'm not saying that like hearing other people's stories is bad, because I think that's how you know where to investigate. So like if someone is going to share their story of what worked for them, I would take that and then take that to your provider or your practitioner, whoever you're working with, and be like, hey, have you heard about this? Like, what do you think about it? And if you have a good one, they're not going to like get insulted and get their ego bruised by that. And they'll walk you through that of why maybe they didn't put you on that, or maybe they go, oh, that's actually a really good idea. Let's look into that more. Just because I see this so often. My big hiccup one that I always like stomp on is DIM. Because like as soon as someone has estrogen dominant symptoms, they're like, take DIM. And I'm like, if you don't have high estrogen, you're just metabolizing it wrong, you're going to feel so much worse on DIM. So
yes. Yeah.
Anyway,
no, that's really important. Yeah.
That's Leah's rant for the day. So anyway, moving on to type 3.
Yeah. So type 3 is post-pill PCOS. Something I see really commonly in my practice. And so the hallmarks of this type is for someone who, before getting on the pill or just a hormonal birth control, like a Mirena IUD, they have normal periods and, don't even think much about their reproductive hormones or anything because there are no issues. And then they get on hormonal birth control, could be a few months, could be a few years, and then they get off it. And all of a sudden they're gaining weight really quickly. Their periods, either they aren't coming back at all, or they're really irregular, maybe heavy bleeding, things like that. So there you are, like in that PCOS state. And, we see that the pill, just how it's interacting in the body, that leads to this hormonal imbalance. But because of that can be one of the easiest types of PCOS to reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts here? I go back and forth. Do you think that post-pill PCOS is basically post-pill issues? It's like birth control syndrome and brought on by birth control? Or do you think that those issues were there before and birth control basically created the perfect environment for them to manifest themselves? Because a lot of issues, like too, I know we always say, people always think, oh, I inherited that from my mom. And it's like, yes, but only 10% of disease is genetic. Like the rest is environmental. So you kind of have to be able to, if you put yourself in that environment, then bam, that's going to happen. So what are your thoughts there? Do you think it's there and then it's exacerbated, or it's just kind of like a post-pill syndrome issue?
Well, I would say it's a little mix of both, in the sense that, we know that not everyone who takes the pill develops these symptoms.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can say, like, we have to pull the pill from the market because it is always leading to these symptoms. That's not the case. And so there are people who have certain dispositions that are leading to these issues when they're taking the pill. So whether or not we know that it was there before taking the pill and then it just, got exacerbated, like unless we do like tons of studies on people prior to them getting on the pill, like there's just no way to know that.
Yeah. Kind of wish we did though. There's so many side effects from birth control, and so many women just go in with no education and just like these blinders on. And it's like, it comes with a black box warning. You'd think your doctor would want to go over those side effects with you. But anyways,
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be a topic for another podcast. And then type 4 is inflammatory PCOS. So what we see with that is typically like an autoimmune condition. along with the PCOS. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis is the most common. So an autoimmune condition of the thyroid.
Yeah.
And so that's just when your immune system is going on overdrive and has found your thyroid as an enemy in your body. And the thyroid is really important with fertility. So regardless of if you have an autoimmune condition, you want to be sure that you get your thyroid hormones checked, because that's so important. But that's a side note.
Yeah.
So with this inflammatory PCOS, so you could have a diagnosed autoimmune condition, or you could just have signs of inflammation like joint pain would be, the biggest one, feeling sluggish, and unfortunately those symptoms are a little vague, but and that's why it's important to talk with someone to help you.
Yeah. So, I think it really is, because like a lot of these symptoms can manifest itself in multiple issues. So like fatigue, it's like, okay, that could just be a blood sugar imbalance, right? And so I think that's where it's, really, really important to make sure you have a clear-cut plan and you aren't just like Dr. Googling your symptoms, even though I do think that can be a helpful way maybe to start. I don't think it's a helpful way to treat, because that's where I feel like the frustration kicks in, and the women are like, I've tried everything. Like, I'm just stuck this way. I can't do anything about it. And it's like, well, if you keep throwing spaghetti at a wall and just hoping something sticks, like that's the best way to burn out and just feel like completely stuck. So yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah. And on that, if you are just kind of Googling information, kind of trying to fit pieces together, you're also missing out on, okay, what else is going on in your body that's contributing to your PCOS symptoms? Like I was just mentioning thyroid, and how important that is. And, so looking at different systems in your body, because fertility is not just about your lady parts, right? Sometimes we get stuck in that, like, okay, I just need to focus on my progesterone levels and focusing on ovulation. Well, what else is going on in your body that's affecting your ovulation? And that's why you need to take that like holistic view of your body. And also why a lot of these medications aren't working, because, what's happening is that many women with PCOS are going in talking about fertility, and their doctors are like, okay, well, we're just going to get you on an ovulation enhancer, like letrozole, right away. And yes, we see that letrozole can support ovulation. It doesn't work for everyone. And that's because it's missing out on this big part of your health that you've got to look at before jumping to these higher level fertility medications, so that you can optimize your health and have the best chance of becoming pregnant. Maybe you don't need the medications, maybe you do. And as long as doing this other work, then, it just increases your chances of it working.
Yeah. I know that a lot of times on here, because our title is Balancing Hormones Naturally, we don't often talk about medication options, because I think that most of the time we skip those foundational steps. But I do vividly remember that we had a client with PCOS, this was a while ago, and she had tried all of the things to get pregnant and get her cycle back, and nothing was really working. And we got her so she actually went through one of our programs, and she started to lose weight. She's like, I got more energy. And she had a lot of things to work through. Like, she also had a thyroid issue, and all of that, but she got set up so well. And then I believe she was regularly cycling. And then she decided, her choice was to also add in an ovulation more support medication. And she messaged 2 months later, and she's like, I'm pregnant. And it's not that she hadn't tried the medications before. It's just that you have to make sure you're ground becomes,
Mhm.
and it's like, yeah, sometimes maybe you're like, okay, I just need some support here in this area getting my body to ovulate, or maybe I need a stronger ovulation. But I feel like if you just jump to taking like Clomid or things like that, your body's not set up. It's not set up to help support you there at all.
Hmm. Yeah, and the issue is that those are used without considering, in many cases, without considering egg quality. In the sense that, so as women, we're born with all the eggs that we will ever carry, but it takes about a year for them to mature, and it's really what's found in that last 3 months leading up to
Hmm.
ovulation of what's that really important time to be supporting your body for that egg quality. So if you're just jumping using Clomid, letrozole, or doing a IVF cycle, and your eggs you're not giving your body that time to be supporting your egg quality, then you might fail at those cycles, when in reality your body just it needs that support to help with egg quality.
Yeah. There's so much that goes into fertility, and it's like you said, it's a very sensitive topic, but I think it really needs to be this whole body approach. It needs to not just be, let me put you on birth control so you start having a regular bleed. Let's shut down your cycle. And then let's go ahead and like trigger our own like synthetic hormone cycle. And it's like, let's work on foundations first, which is hard, Like, I feel like it's so hard because when you maybe finally find this, then you go, I have to wait longer, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So it can be frustrating.
Yeah. And so you certainly have to take into consideration your timeline for fertility. And that's why, like really the best day to start is today
Yeah.
of, yeah, supporting your health. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to call out some people here in a loving manner, but actually one of the largest, like, majority of women who join, any of our programs in the younger age group are engaged. So I know you love seed cycling, but you're really struggling to figure out what to get your seeds in. You're like, okay, it's kind of boring just sticking them in a smoothie. So I have a couple suggestions for you. If you don't already do the energy ball seed cycling balls, you are missing out. Let me give you a recipe. So this is my favorite one of all time, but I use 2 cups of gluten-free oats, glyphosate-free oats. I use 1 cup of nut butter, and then 1 cup of the seeds of whatever phase I'm in. So if I'm in my follicular phase or period, I'm going to be doing 1 cup of the pumpkin and flaxseed blend. So that's going to be the Nurture blend from Funk It Wellness. I do less than a half a cup of honey. Sometimes I sprinkle some hemp hearts in there or chia seeds. I'll do a sprinkle of some Celtic sea salt and then a teaspoon of vanilla. And then if you're feeling spicy, I like to do some Hu chocolate chunks. Those are really good. Mix it all up. I stick it in the fridge, kind of, solidify for a second, pull it back out, roll it into balls, and voila, you can have 2 of those a day, get your seeds in, and thoroughly enjoy your life. The other way that I really like getting them in is overnight oats or protein oats. So this is really good if you have to be somewhere in the morning, right? So I will do like half a cup of oats, and then you can put some raw dairy in there if you're okay with that, or some coconut milk. And you cover the oats so they're fully submerged. And then I'll put my 2 tablespoons of seeds in there. And then I typically will do a protein powder as well. And then a little bit more fat, so some nut butter. And then you cover and you stick it in the fridge, and I'll mix it up, you guys. And then I will pull that out the next morning, and I will top it with some berries. And then I typically will add some meat on the side to make sure I'm getting in enough protein for my breakfast. But that's another great way to get your seeds in, and it's super fast morning breakfast, so highly recommend.
to make this even faster, I of course am using my Funk It Wellness seeds because I don't have to grind them, because they grind them right before they are shipped to me. These are B Corp organic certified seeds. You guys, you can taste the difference. I 1000% recommend them. Plus, you don't have to have like a million bags of seeds in your pantry, because they have the Nurture blend, which is your pumpkin and flax seeds. And then they have the Radiate blend, which is your sesame and sunflower. So you just have these two tiny bags of seeds instead of tons of bags of seeds all over the place, right? So you can get their subscription. So they're shipped to your house every single month, and they're ground right before they're shipped to you, so they're not going to go rancid, okay? So go get the subscription, go to Funk It Wellness, do the subscription, you'll get free shipping, yes, and a discount. Then use the code LEAH15, LEAH15, to save even more money, making it super cost effective. But let's be real, you guys, this is saving you time. And if you want to be consistent with seed cycling, you need to figure out how to fit it in your life in a way that you don't have to think very hard about it. And that is what Funk It Wellness brings to you, is it makes it so easy to be consistent. And then of course you're going to see results because you're being consistent.
Because like they have cycle issues, they have hormone issues, but they really are like, I'm going to put on the back burner until like, oh, like I'm getting married, I want to have kids. Like, this is the stage of life that I'm entering. And I literally talked to someone the other day and she's like, yeah, I'll worry about my cycle issues like later when I'm engaged. And I'm like, why? It may take you like what? It may take you a year. It may take you 2 years. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take. So start now.
Well, yeah. And because when, fertility issues are your goal, or balancing your cycles just to avoid pain and anger and irritability, all that, you're going to get those results, or we're working towards those results, but there's so much more that opens up for your health while you're working on this, better moods, better sleep, all of these just great things that are supportive for just feeling really good on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's true. It all works together. So, obviously I want to be conscious of time as my toddler throws basketball across the room. But so we figured out what our 4 types are, okay? And, advocating a little bit for yourself at the doctor. So let's say you are struggling with fertility, okay? So then you're like, okay, I'm going to go and try to get a diagnosis. I'm going to try and figure out what type I have. Then yes, you have to be specific. I would recommend testing, but are there any things that are generally across the board, everybody should do this no matter what, if you're trying to get pregnant?
Yeah. Yes. And how I would say about that. So I put together a PCOS fertility protocol, which basically does just that. So in the sense of, yes, everyone should figure out what type of PCOS they have. Everyone should figure out, if gut health is affecting their fertility. Everyone should be looking at external exposure to toxins.
Oh, such a big one.
How to reduce that exposure when looking at fertility. Everyone needs to be focusing on egg quality. Those are big topics that then you need to be working with someone, an expert who understands PCOS, to then help you figure out what that looks like for your picture. Yes. Because like toxins, that's a big thing, but everyone has a different toxic load. Everyone, it depends on our environment, where we live, what kind of foods we're eating, what kind of, food storage we have, things like that. So again, yes, there are these like big topics that are important to like put a path forward for yourself, but it's going to be different of what that looks like.
And also, I highly recommend everybody goes back and listens to the episode, It Takes Two to Tango, because we did have a specialist come on for male fertility. And I think, especially if you do get a diagnosis for PCOS, you immediately just go, oh, it's just a woman's issue. And it's like, takes two.
Yeah.
So.
Right. I mean, when we look at for infertility, female infertility is about 30%, male infertility is about 30%, and then 30% is unknown. So, hello, I mean, the male infertility is the same ratio as female. So, yes, talk with your partner about getting tested. It's not just your fault. So,
yeah. And I mean, yeah, we discussed that in the episode too. And it's just like wild to me, where, I mean, there's just basic things men can do that really, 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 whether like, you know it or not, you should be doing this if you're wanting to have kids, like across the board.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then when you talked about the environmental toxins, this is where, again, I'm going to bring, I know I keep doing this, you guys, but I want you to be safe. Do not go on the cookie cutter, like heavy metal detox, parasite cleanse, environmental flush it out of my system thing. And the reason why I say this is because there are so many steps to this. And if you try and detox or push these things out when your body is not prepared, it's not strong enough, you guys, all hell will break loose. Seriously. It will not be fun. At all.
No. And, one of the biggest issues with detox, doing it like at home, kind of piecing things together is that you activate, you bring the toxins out of the cells and then you don't flush them out of the body. So, you don't want that. That will just bring on more issues.
Yeah. I just had, a client, actually, she has parasites. So we found that in her labs and she goes, okay, so I just have to ask this question, like, is everything just going to get so much worse when I start this parasite cleanse? Because one of my friends did a parasite cleanse and it made her crazy. And I don't want to go through that. And I'm like, no, you'll be fine. Because we'll set you up correctly. But that's what I see. Like you see some influencer or you Google and you go, oh, I got parasites, which I mean, maybe you do, but like, you can't just hop on that train, you guys.
Yes. Excellent advice.
I feel like this whole episode is just me like, go test, go talk to somebody. Please don't hurt yourself. But it really does help. And I personally, from when I tried to cookie cutter it to when I had a very set plan, you guys, I saved so much more money. And I know that sounds like cliche because you're like, I have to go pay for a consult or I have to pay for these labs. Like, how am I saving money, Leah? Well, I mean, I spent thousands of dollars trying random supplements and it's like, did I spend $1,000 in 1 month? No, but like added up over the amount of time, thousands of dollars, thousands of hours of frustration, so it really, it is cheaper in the long run, even though you may just go, that's not true, Leah. That's fine.
Yeah. And when it comes to fertility, I mean, you want to be on a clear, straightforward path because, there is at some point your body will shift into not making babies. So I don't want to stress anyone out about the biological clock.
Yeah.
But, this is not something that you've got, the rest of your life to be working on.
Yeah. And again, I'm stressing the whole, please don't wait until you're like, I've had no cycles but I'm just going to wait until I want to have kids or, I just get so many engaged people or they've been married for a while and, they're like, well, we've kind of been struggling with this for a while. And so now we're going to reach out. And I'm like, well, based off of these labs, we have a lot of work to do. So, I don't know. I think it can be a blessing and a curse. I'm sure you get this where you go through the labs with people and they literally bawl in a good way because they're like, finally, I don't feel crazy. Finally, I have answers. Even though I see that I have so much work to do, at least there's something I can do, you know?
Yes, it just gives you concrete information on how to move forward. And then also, if your partner isn't yet on board with you making these changes or supporting you by, helping you make these changes, showing those lab results can be really helpful, because then for them, they're seeing like, okay, yes, like we have to make these changes.
Yeah. Guys really like facts when it's like cold, hard data. It's one of their things.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some last words or thoughts or advice that you have for everybody that maybe they have been diagnosed with PCOS, they've been struggling for a while, or they've just been struggling and they're not sure which way to go? What are some words you'd have for them?
Yeah. So, first off, don't feel alone. And, you're probably really frustrated and feeling like your body is broken, but you're feeling that way because you don't have the right support right now. And there's just too much misinformation out there that, maybe you heard something from a doctor that is just making you feel like there is no hope. But I want you to know, if you haven't taken this step to really understand your PCOS type and worked with somebody who will focus on, the root cause of your fertility issues, that's when you open up your fertility, getting that individualized plan. That's when you get the best chance at becoming pregnant, because you're focusing on internally what your body needs the most in order to make a baby.
Yeah. And while you guys are doing that, what Dr. Potter said, everybody can reduce their toxic intake. Like, get rid of those endocrine disruptors, like throw away your wall plugins and your air fresheners. Right. Everybody can do that. That's free. Kind of throwing money in the garbage, but it's free.
Right. Yeah.
So how can people find you? I'll make sure I link everything below, of course, as well.
Yes. Yeah. You can find me on my website. I frequently put up YouTube videos. I've got an active blog. And I also want to let you know that if you're in a place and you're really struggling with PCOS and you haven't figured out your PCOS type, I invite you to come and talk with me to help figure out that type, so then you can get that clear plan forward. And so, I normally offer those sessions for $299. But Leah, you've put together this amazing community. So I just want to offer this for free for your community. So yeah.
Take her up on that.
So yeah, you can find that at drangelapotter.com/PCOS type. And that'll bring you up to the session site. And then the discount code will be Balancing Hormones Naturally. So for Leah's podcast.
You guys, that should be flooded. I'm just saying, it should be flooded. If you don't take advantage of free support, you should. And I don't know. I don't know why people don't take advantage of free support. Sometimes they need that investment to like push them over the ledge. But like, you guys, if you figure out what type you are, that gives you like such a clear direction then on, where you can go. So thank you. We'll make sure we link that.
Spaghetti at the wall. Yeah,
exactly.
Of course.
Well, thank you very much for hopping on.
Yeah, of course. And I just want to give a shout out to you, Leah. Like, you listeners can't see her right now, but she's got 2 kids with her. She's putting her baby down for a nap. Like, she is an amazing woman. Like, you are a badass.
Thank you. That's where all the noises are coming from. It's like Landon with his trucks. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Balancing Hormones Naturally. If you found this helpful, I would love for you to share it with a friend and post it on your stories and tag Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast so we can get this message out. You can find me on Instagram at Leah_BRUEG, and I would absolutely love to hear from you.